Welcome to part 3 of making a toon-style animation in Blender. You've either stuck it out this far or your YouTube is on autoplay, but either way, welcome. We're gonna finish up this shot by making the backgrounds in Blender, rendering them out, and doing some final little tips and tricks in After Effects. So let's get started. So now I'm gonna work on the background for this character. Right here, I have in my asset browser, I have some Toon Anime Fire. This came from Christophe Dedin on Gumtree. It's free. I'll put a link in the description below. They're really cool procedural fire elements that have various anime styles. So to begin with, I'm just gonna set up a plane, put this texture on it, and then build this fire behind the main character. I'm just going to add an array to extend some of this fire, make a couple layers, and change the color a little bit of the flames just to get something that's a little more dynamic, than just one fire element. One thing is that these procedural elements, the speed and motion of the camera affects how fast the flames move. And so when you watch full speed playback, you'll notice that when the camera punches in or the camera pushes in, the fire goes much faster than when the camera goes steady. And I could have spent some time trying to figure out ways to work around that, but I kind of just left it. It was just one of those little tiny things that bothered me in the final render that I don't know if other people would notice, but I certainly did. But, just one of those things that also comes with when you're using assets and things from other folks. Sometimes they behave idiosyncratically. Now I'm blocking out some rough shapes for the ground and the ledge that he's jumping off of. And this is a procedural toon concrete texture that I made a while back that's in my asset browser. You can definitely go to my Patreon and get access to this if you'd like. But as I was playing with it, I realized it was kind of too simple and I didn't want to spend a bunch of time making any kind of complex geometry for this scene, just because I wanted to, speed up the process a little bit to record the tutorial. So instead, I used one of these building elements from Kitbash. I bought one of their packs a while back and use it fairly frequently in various shots and things. But I decided to just, drag and drop that and then work on changing all the materials in this model to be more toon style. So I went into the material here and I copy pasted that diffuse shader to RGB and color ramp node setup that we had, as well as, the base color here. So we're going to do the same thing that we did for the character, which is take the base color from this texture and plug it into the main emission texture. And this Kitbash building has a bunch of textures already built into it. So I did have to repeat the process quite a few times, which was a little bit tedious just to get everything done. But then once it was done, it was done. And so what I'm doing is basically taking, whatever texture image is used on the model that becomes, full color, and then using the same multiply node setup for any of the shading. So all of our shadows are going to be super crisp and more toon-like. And then since the scene has all of this fire around it, I'm going to go back into After Effects here, choose the layer that's the blue light on his right side, our left side, and quickly change that to something that's more of kind of like a yellow-orange color, as if he's, this character is being illuminated by that fire, just so it kind of, matches a little bit better. I'm going to take those area lights that I set up prior and just add them to a new collection so I can just turn them off real quick, and then hit Shift A, add a light, add a sun. And then I'm just going to rotate the sun a little bit until I get a direction of light that I like on the building. So I want to be able to, see some light, see some shadow, also get some shadow from the various like 3D elements that we actually have here on the model, and lighting that kind of matches the character renders that we already did. Kind of the beauty of doing this in layers and the beauty of doing a toon style animation is that you get a lot of creative leeway in what you want this to look like. So it does not have to match perfectly. You get a ton of, creative license for whatever you want the look to be. And I'm also going to render them out, the fire and the building, in separate passes, just so I can keep them separate, toggle them on and off in After Effects, and also be able to add adjustment layers to, just the fire in the background, but not the building in the foreground. So to start, I'm going to render out the fire as a PNG sequence with an alpha channel. Now, similar to the character where we render out a pass that's just sort of black and white, as a luma mat for where the light is, I'm going to do the same thing on the building by going through all the materials yet again and turning off the base color node, so it's just black and white. There are so many materials. I just went through and did it pretty quickly. The multiply was not set to 100 on all of them, and that's why some of the shadows are more gray. But when I bring this into After Effects, I can just add like a levels or curves adjustment to make that gray black, and I will end up with the same luma mat. And so I'm going to do a couple of these, one with the sun shining from the left, one with the sun shining from the right, and then we can play with, similar to the character, compositing those together with different values and color of lighting as well. Though one thing I do notice when I'm doing this render is some horrifically jagged shadows. What is going on there? Okay, let's get to the bottom of this. It's coming from the shadow caused by the sun. So let's see if there's some settings here that we can do. Contact shadows is going to fill that out actually a little bit nicer. But if I go into the scene tab and go to the shadow drop down, okay, that looks better. It looks like in this case, the like soft shadows does look a little bit better than keeping the shadows really crisp. And I guess we'll do that for the building. But again, we get that creative license to make the foreground and background look a little different. But so now inside of After Effects, we're going to bring in those image sequences of our background. So navigate to where you had them. Again, this is why that file organization is so important, so you can keep track of everything. I have 3 building renders and the fire as well. So beneath our character, let's drop our building base, our fire behind it, and then our 2 building lights. And I'm going to set the label there to cyan because these are going to be luma mats. Let me rename some layers here because I am quickly going to lose track of where everything is. And sometimes those long file names get annoying when you're looking at your layer names. So first I'm going to go to this building. I'm going to add levels. And this is just to crush those gray values like I mentioned before. So we have a black and white luma mat. Then I'm going to do the same thing for this right side. I'm going to duplicate them and pre-compose them and call them building shadow luma. Set the top one to multiply so the shadows are added so that, we have all the shadow values, all the light values together. I'm going to copy the find edges and level effects from the shadow luma on the character and then apply them to the building itself. And that's just going to give us a little more outline detail, especially lines along the shadow edges. Now we're going to go to our building base and add a lumetri color, go to color wheels, and just bring down the brightness a bit so our base color in the background isn't, super bright. I'm going to duplicate the two orange and yellow colors from the character and then just reparent them to the Luma, building Luma. I'm going to bring down the opacity and just play with some overall settings here to get something that I think looks okay. Then let me just unsolo everything and see how this is looking. So it looks okay. I do think that the character kind of blends in with the background now because the color of the lighting is the same. So I'm going to take the building base, duplicate it, building halftone, and then I'm going to copy, delete that, copy the halftone texture from the character, paste it here. That one's set to multiply and parented to the Luma. So I'm going to do the same thing here so that we get the halftone just in the shadow areas. Something like that. Now, I will say there's a lot of stuff going on in this shot, and I think if I were to do this over again, I think I would have done almost like a less complicated building object just because there's so much going on. You're not really sure where to look. But I'm going to keep tweaking a bunch of settings with the light values and things like that on both the character and the foreground until I get something that I think looks nice. And that can include turning some layers on and off and the value of rendering stuff out in passes is that you do have all that control here in the compositing stage because each light is separate, so you're not kind of stuck to a baked-in lighting design. So I kind of like it with just one light on instead of the two, but that means that some of the shadow lines are off, so I'm going to have to go into these pre-comps and toggle them on and off here as well so that I can get those outlines along the shadow edges. And basically keep tweaking things until I come up with something that I do like. And I am trying at all costs to avoid having to do more renders out of Blender, though I definitely could do that by making a new building and just swapping out this building section entirely, which is very nice by having the character foreground and background all separate in that way. One downside to having everything separate is that the character is on top of the building and his feet should definitely be behind that wall when he first starts his jump. So I am just going to manually kind of make a mask over that wall because it's only a few frames and I'm just going to, manually animate it for that first chunk and then go through and for the character, for the Luma, for the shadow Luma, the lines that overlay, just kind of make sure that everything is set to the inverse alpha matte of this solid that I'm animating. Now I'm going to go work on this fire background, add an adjustment layer, and then I'm going to add a turbulent displace effect. Adjust the size and amount just to kind of give it a little more animation. If you alt-click evolution, do time times 500, that's just going to keep it constantly animating, and that's just going to add some more movement and motion and stuff to that fire in the background. I'm going to make another adjustment layer. Now I'm going to add this Boris Effects chromatic aberration and just add some distortion there to the red. And that looks pretty good. In fact, I am just going to duplicate that. Let's rename it BCC chromatic. Duplicate it and add it up to the top two because I think that's going to look good over everything just to, give that very subtle touch on all of the edges, but making it more extreme on the fire. Toggle that on and off. Okay. Play with some settings here. Make another adjustment layer. Let's go into some BCC optical diffusion. Is diffusion what I want? No, not that one. Mist. Let's do this one. There we go. Just some like extra glow to the fire. This is all with some Boris Effects plugins. There is a link in the description below for 15% off those Boris Effects plugins. I've been using them a ton in my compositing, not only for toon-style stuff like this, but for all of the freelance visual effects that I'm doing, and I cannot recommend it enough. Plus, you, of course, get the discount using the link below. Now I'm going to duplicate the fire and add an echo effect here. If you set it to minimum, it's not overly bright, and then we can bring down the starting intensity and the decay to make it a little more subtle, but I don't know how much this is actually adding, but I thought maybe it could kind of just add some more interesting visuals to the fire itself. This character line overlay I'm realizing is pretty intense, so I'm going to drop the opacity on that just a touch. And it looks fine in this close-up, but that was a little too aggressive right there. And of course, endlessly tweaking, I went in and just added a color grade layer, made the shadows of the shot more of this kind of foresty, minty green color, and just gave it an overall look that I think ties it all together. Now, I do think our main character here in the beginning of the shot definitely blends into the fire too much, and I think some of the lighting could be adjusted. And if this were for an actual project, I would go through and revise this a little bit. But I think the shot is still pretty cool. I think it looks a little badass, looks animated, and is a really powerful way to use Blender to do some animation that I certainly could never do if I had to hand draw it, but also brings the power of working within 3D to various looks and styles. And if you're freelancing, especially if you're a visual effects artist, a filmmaker, knowing these tools and having them in your tool belt definitely helps so that you can accommodate various projects. Like I did a couple toon-style animations like this for a few different clients, and it was all because I just thought, hey, this is cool, and I gave it a try, even though I'm not, an animator per se. So thanks for watching this tutorial. Let me know if you found this helpful in the comments below, and also send me links to your stuff on social media. There are links in the description for discounted Boris effects. You can get 15% off on if you follow those links. The discount shows up when it's in your cart. You did it. You made a toon-style animation in Blender. Hopefully you found something in here helpful. I know for myself, sometimes I've done fully toon animated shots for music videos, for example, but little techniques throughout this tutorial I've also implemented for holograms and some other just VFX compositing shots as well.